When someone doesn't respect you, the first instinct most people have is either to push back hard or to stay silent and hope it goes away. But neither of those really works. Pushing back too aggressively just escalates the problem, while silence teaches the other person that you're okay with the way they're treating you. Respect starts with boundaries, and those boundaries aren't about punishment, they're about clarity. You can't expect people to treat you differently if you never tell them how you want to be treated. That's where boundaries come in, and the stronger you are at setting them, the faster people understand you're not available for disrespect. The problem is, many people think boundaries are rude. They worry that saying no will offend someone or make them look selfish. But let me flip that thought for you. Boundaries are not about controlling other people. They're about controlling yourself. You don't force someone to do anything with a boundary. You simply say, "This is what I will and won't allow in my space." Think about a fence around a yard. The fence doesn't stop someone from walking on the sidewalk, but it makes it clear where your property begins and where their freedom ends. Without that fence, you can't expect anyone to know they've crossed a line. Let's put this into practice. Imagine someone constantly interrupts you in conversations. You feel disrespected, but you've never said anything. Every time they do it, your frustration grows, but they keep right on doing it. Why? Because you haven't drawn the line. A boundary sounds like this: I want to hear what you're saying, but I also want the same chance to finish my thought. Please let me complete my point before jumping in. That's clear. That's respectful. That's a boundary. Notice it's not an attack, it's an instruction. The difference is huge. Here's the part people get wrong. Boundaries are not suggestions. They're not a polite hint that you hope the other person picks up on. Boundaries need to be direct, specific, and paired with action if they're ignored. Otherwise, they're not boundaries at all. They're just wishes. If someone crosses the line after you've stated it clearly, the responsibility shifts to you. You don't argue. You don't beg. You don't complain. You follow through. If you said you'd leave the room if the disrespect continues, you leave. That action shows you're serious without needing to raise your voice. It's also important to remember that boundaries don't need an apology attached. Too many people soften their boundaries with phrases like, "I'm sorry, but," or "I don't mean to be difficult, but." That weakens your message. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're self-respect. When you deliver them, you do so with confidence. You don't owe anyone an apology for expecting to be treated with decency. In fact, every time you apologize for your boundary, you make it easier for the other person to dismiss it as optional. Remove the apology, and your boundary stands taller. Boundaries also reveal who respects you and who doesn't. People who value you will adjust once they know where the line is. People who don't respect you will get defensive, dismissive, or even angry when you state your needs. And while that might feel uncomfortable in the moment, it's actually a gift. It shows you who's capable of being in your space long-term and who isn't. Think of boundaries as a filter. The people who can handle them are safe to keep around. The people who can't reveal themselves quickly, and you save yourself years of frustration by knowing sooner rather than later. When you start setting boundaries, you'll notice something powerful. The more you practice, the less resistance you feel inside. At first, it's uncomfortable. You'll second-guess yourself, wonder if you're being too harsh, maybe even feel guilty. That's normal because you're breaking a habit of people-pleasing. But the more you enforce your limits calmly and clearly, the more natural it becomes. You stop viewing boundaries as a confrontation and start seeing them as protection. You begin to carry yourself differently, with quiet confidence, because you know you won't allow anyone to treat you beneath the standard you've set. When someone disrespects you, the natural urge is to snap back, raise your voice, or throw their energy right back at them. That's what disrespect tries to pull out of you. It baits you into abandoning your control, because the moment you react in anger, they've won. You've proven that they can get under your skin. Staying calm isn't about letting them off the hook. It's about protecting your power. The calmer you are, the harder it is for anyone to take control of the situation away from you. Calmness isn't weakness. It's strength under control. Think about the last time someone came at you with disrespect. Maybe they raised their voice, rolled their eyes, or dismissed you in front of others. Did it make you want to bite back? Of course, that's human. But if you answered their heat with more heat, what happened? The situation escalated. And when it escalates, you lose influence. Calmness works the opposite way. It slows the pace. It forces the other person to realize they can't drag you into their storm. It's not about suppressing your emotions. It's about choosing not to let them dictate your response. There's a reason calmness feels uncomfortable at first. Most of us are wired to defend ourselves instantly, to fight disrespect with force. But calmness doesn't mean silence. It means steady tone, steady words, steady body language. Imagine two people yelling. They're not listening. They're battling. Now imagine one person speaking slowly with measured words while the other shouts. Who looks in control? The calm person. That control earns respect, even if the other person doesn't show it in the moment. You're proving you won't be dragged into chaos. One of the most effective tools to stay calm is slowing your response. You don't need to fire back instantly. You can pause, breathe, look at the person. That pause creates space, and space gives you clarity. In that moment, you decide what to say instead of blurting out something you'll regret. Think of it like putting a buffer between their disrespect and your reply. The pause tells them you're not rattled, you're thinking, and you're not going to play their game. And often, that pause alone makes them rethink how they're coming at you. Another way to maintain calm is through your tone of voice. Tone communicates more than words ever do. A calm, steady tone says, "I'm in control." A raised, shaky, or sarcastic tone says, "I'm losing it." Even if your words are strong, if your tone cracks, you give away your power. Practice lowering your voice instead of raising it. When someone disrespects you and you lower your tone, you stand out instantly. People expect fire to meet fire. They don't expect water. Calmness surprises them, and surprise has power. Body language is just as critical. If your arms are flailing, your eyes darting, your posture collapsing, you've already lost ground. Calm body language means squared shoulders, steady eye contact, minimal movement. You're not frozen, but you're composed. That stillness communicates unshakable confidence. And here's the thing, even if you don't feel confident inside, acting calm on the outside often helps you feel calmer on the inside. Your body can teach your mind how to follow. Over time, staying calm in the face of disrespect becomes less about the other person and more about your own peace. You stop reacting to every slight, every comment, every jab. You realize not every battle deserves your energy, and not every word deserves your reply. Calmness becomes your filter. You're no longer pulled into every storm someone tries to create. Instead, you stand like a rock in the river. The water rushes around you, but you remain steady. And when you live that way, people begin to recognize something powerful in you. They realize they can't control you with disrespect. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they feel disrespected is swinging too far in their response. They either say nothing at all, or they come out swinging with words designed to cut back. But silence builds resentment, and aggression builds conflict. The middle ground is assertiveness, and that's where the real power lies. Assertive language allows you to stand up for yourself without putting someone else down. It communicates your standards without turning the moment into a fight. It's a skill, and like any skill, the more you practice it, the sharper it becomes. Think about the difference between these two statements. You're always rude to me, and I'm sick of it, versus I won't continue this conversation if the disrespect continues. The first one is aggressive. It attacks the other person. It uses exaggeration like always, and it fuels defensiveness. The second one is assertive. It doesn't accuse, it doesn't exaggerate. It simply lays down a clear standard and consequence. The shift may sound small, but it changes everything about how your words are received. One triggers a wall, the other sets a line. Assertive language also avoids blame. Instead of, "You make me feel stupid when you talk like that," you might say, "I don't accept being spoken to in that way." Do you hear the difference? The first puts the responsibility on the other person to validate your feelings. The second puts the responsibility on you to set your boundary. It's not about handing them power, it's about claiming your own. Aggressive language gives them a reason to fight back. Assertive language gives them a choice, either adjust or lose access to you. Tone plays a major role here as well. You can use the right words but the wrong tone and still sound aggressive. Assertive language is paired with calm delivery. You're not spitting the words like bullets, you're placing them like markers. Your tone is steady, direct, and confident. When your words and tone match, your message lands clean. That's when the person on the other side realizes you're not here to fight, you're here to stand firm. And firmness delivered with calmness is hard to argue with. Another aspect of assertive language is precision. Avoid vague statements like, "I don't like the way you act sometimes." That's too broad, too unclear. Precision sounds like, "When you interrupt me, it makes it impossible for me to share my full thought. I need you to let me finish before responding." That's specific, clear, and actionable. Aggressive language leaves the other person guessing what the real issue is. Assertive language removes all guesswork. It identifies the behavior, names the problem, and sets the expectation for change. Assertiveness also keeps the focus on your boundaries instead of their flaws. Aggression says, "You're the problem." Assertiveness says, "This is the standard I live by." One approach attacks the person, the other protects your space. And when you shift the focus away from who they are and onto what you allow, you make it much harder for them to twist the conversation or distract from the issue. Assertiveness keeps the spotlight where it belongs, on your right to be treated with respect. With practice, you'll notice assertive language begins to reshape not just how others respond to you, but how you see yourself. Each time you state a need clearly and calmly, you're reinforcing your own worth. You're proving to yourself that your voice matters, your boundaries matter, and you don't need to attack to be heard. Aggression might give a short burst of power, but assertiveness builds lasting respect. It becomes less about winning arguments and more about building standards that no one is allowed to cross, no matter who they are or how close they stand to you. There comes a point when words are no longer enough. You've been clear, you've been calm, you've been assertive, but the other person still refuses to treat you with respect. That's when you move beyond what you say into what you do. Limiting your access means reducing the time, energy, and space you give to someone who has shown they don't value you. It's not about being dramatic or cutting people off in anger. It's about adjusting your availability to match the level of respect you're receiving. If they give you less, you give them less. Think about relationships like investments. When you put your time, energy, and attention into someone, you're investing. If that investment keeps coming back empty or worse, toxic, why would you keep pouring into it? Limiting your access is like shifting your money out of a bad stock. You don't announce it to the world. You don't hold a press conference. You just quietly pull your resources out and put them where they'll grow. Respect works the same way. If someone can't value what you bring, they don't deserve as much of it. One of the strongest forms of boundary setting is distance. Not every boundary has to be spoken out loud. Sometimes it's shown through how often you answer the phone, how quickly you reply to texts, how much you show up in their space. If someone repeatedly crosses your lines, you don't need to debate it forever. You simply create more space, less response, less presence, less access. That's not punishment, that's protection. And the beauty is, you don't need permission from anyone to do it. Limiting access also works in professional settings. You may not be able to cut someone off completely, but you can control how much access they have to your time and focus. You can shorten meetings, keep interactions task-based, and stop volunteering for extra responsibilities that put you under their influence. You can redirect communication into emails instead of spontaneous drop-ins. Each adjustment is subtle but powerful, and together they send a clear message. My time is valuable, and you don't get unlimited access to it if you can't respect me. The key here is consistency. If you tell someone you're going to limit their access, but you keep showing up every time they call, you're training them not to take you seriously. Access is controlled by action, not announcements. The more consistent you are in limiting the space someone has in your life, the quicker they recognize that disrespect has consequences. You don't have to argue. You don't have to convince. You simply change the level of access, and the change speaks louder than any lecture ever could. What's powerful about limiting access is how it protects your peace. When you're no longer constantly exposed to disrespect, you give yourself room to breathe again. You're not on edge waiting for the next insult, the next jab, the next roll of the eyes. You take back your environment by controlling who gets into it and how much of it they get. That space allows you to reset, to think clearly, and to focus your time on people who actually lift you up instead of drag you down. And here's the truth. Not everyone deserves the same level of access to you. Access should be earned and maintained through respect. The closer someone wants to stand in your life, the higher the standard they need to meet. If they don't meet it, they step back. You don't have to hate them, you don't have to argue with them, but you also don't have to hand them a front row seat to your life. Limiting access reminds both you and them that your time and energy are valuable, and you're the one in charge of where they go. The way you carry yourself sets the tone for how others treat you. If you don't respect yourself, it becomes very difficult to demand respect from anyone else. People take their cues from you, whether you realize it or not. The words you use about yourself, the way you handle your boundaries, and the level of standards you live by are constantly teaching others how to interact with you. Self-respect isn't loud or showy. It's steady, quiet, and consistent. And the more consistent it is, the harder it is for anyone around you to ignore. Think about how often you brush off small jabs or jokes at your expense. Maybe someone mocks you lightly, and instead of addressing it, you laugh it off to keep the peace. Over time, that trains them that it's okay to treat you that way. Self-respect says, I'm not going to let disrespect hide behind a joke. It doesn't mean you blow up or get defensive. It simply means you calmly let people know where the line is. The way you respond to those small moments sets the precedent for how people approach the bigger ones. Leading by example also shows up in how you talk about yourself. If you constantly put yourself down, others will follow your lead. If you say things like, I'm terrible at everything, or I'm just not worth it, you're sending out an invitation for others to agree. But when you speak about yourself with dignity, even when you acknowledge flaws, you're training people to view you through the same lens. Self-respect doesn't mean arrogance. It means refusing to let negative self-talk become the story you believe or the script you hand to others. Another area where self-respect shows up is in the choices you make about your time and energy. Do you constantly overextend yourself for people who never reciprocate? Do you say yes to everything just to avoid disappointing others? Every time you do that, you're teaching people that your needs don't matter. But when you start saying no with confidence, you shift the balance. People begin to see that your time is valuable and they learn to treat it that way. Self-respect is about valuing your energy enough to protect it. 2. It's also important to note that self-respect doesn't have to be explained. You don't need to give long speeches about why you're making a choice. Your actions speak louder than any justification ever could. If you say you won't tolerate being interrupted and you calmly stop talking until the other person is done, that action teaches more than 10 explanations ever would. If you say you won't attend events where you're treated poorly and then you actually stop showing up, that action says it all. Self-respect is communicated best through what you do, not just what you say. Leading by example with self-respect also inspires others. When people see you holding firm to your standards, some of them will be challenged by it, but others will be encouraged. You may notice friends, coworkers, or even family members start to handle themselves differently after watching you. Respect creates ripple effects. Your choice to carry yourself with dignity might be the thing that gives someone else the courage to do the same in their life. When you model what it looks like, you make it easier for others to follow. And here's the bigger truth. Leading with self-respect gives you freedom. Freedom from chasing validation. Freedom from over-explaining yourself. Freedom from constantly wondering why someone treats you poorly. You stop looking outward for respect and start building it inward. And the stronger that inward foundation